Hello everyone, Toon World here. Hopefully you're all doing well whenever it is you're watching this video. Today I'm going to be talking about my take on Crystron Scrap Therion, a very weird amalgamation of archetypes that I put together and that I play on really a rogue level. So you might be wondering, Toon, why aren't you covering any P.U.N.K video this week? Why didn't you cover any P.U.N.K videos last week? Basically, I haven't been playing too much this format, and so I felt like rather than trying to make a video around the archetype that might as well be half-assed as a result of my inexperience with the current format and how P.U.N.K fares in it, I would redirect my interest to something that I have been working with, even if said thing isn't the most competitive deck in the world, and if it also isn't the most popular strategy in the world. Because at the end of the day, remember that this channel is, for me, a creative outlet. I do still want to support all of you subscribers, since you are the reason why I've continued making videos, why I'm here, and why I want to continue growing. Nonetheless, I still want to have the capacity to make videos I want to make rather than being relegated to only making P.U.N.K videos, even if that is what I started my brand on. So I hope you can all understand, but don't worry, I'll come back to P.U.N.K videos soon. I do think I want to get out a Kashtira P.U.N.K deck profile eventually once my friend lets me borrow his Kashtira Fenrirs, and after I get some testing on that build so that I can give you a more confident list that you can take into the current game. So Crystron Scrap Therion. Basically, one day I was looking at my Invasion Vengeance mat, I realized, wait a minute, this set had Crystrons, and I remember liking Crystrons, not because it was good in Duel Links, not because it was good in the past, but just because it was a very neat strategy. And so after some testing, I made a list that I'm honestly proud of, even though you could argue it's not the most unique list, not the most groundbreaking list. I still enjoy what I've made, and as a result, I want to share this deck profile with you in the case that you're interested, and or if there are any Scrap players, any Therion players, and or any Crystron players out there that wanted such content, since it seems like YouTube is lacking a bit on this side, maybe for good reason, since Crystron is the best archetype. So that's what we're going to talk about today. As per usual, remember to like and subscribe. I really appreciate it, since again, the main driver for me continuing this channel, and of course I love interacting with all you viewers. So if you have any comments you end up brewing up when you watch this video, please let me know please let me know below. Other disclaimer that I always put in the front of my deck profiles: remember that I'm not the best duelist in the world. I'm certainly not the most experienced Crystron, Scrap, and or Therion player in the world. So if you see anything egregious here that you feel like needs fixing, let me know down below, and I'll try to fix the deck list up so that we can incorporate those additional changes. Now that I've said all of this, I think that's all I need to say at the start of the video. You know, I don't have a script for this. It's mostly on the spot. Thus, we're going to get into the deck profile. Main deck monsters first, spells and traps next, extra deck third, and then finally the usual concluding remarks on what I think about the deck itself. So let's go. Alright, so for the main deck monsters, we're first going to tackle the Crystron names, the Scrap names, and then the miscellaneous monsters, as well as the Therion package. So, for the Crystron names, we're playing one copy of Praesiordal, 2 copies of Thistfern, 1 copy of Smyger, 1 copy of Rosenix, 1 copy of Rion, 2 copies of Sofefnir, and 2 copies of Citri. Now, to explain these names, if you're an experienced Crystron player, you might be familiar with what all these cards do. The ratios might be off, so I apologize. If you're unfamiliar, basically the whole idea behind Crystrons is all these non-tuners minus Sofefnir can tutor out your tuner monsters, and these tuner monsters synchro summon into machine synchro monsters only during your opponent's turn. And so through certain combo lines, you can make big synchro monsters because you can synchro summon into one of these machine synchro tuners called Crystron Quandax, which can quick synchro summon during your opponent's turn into, say, Trishula, Aquarion, Gandrax. There's a variety of options, as you might have seen in my recent Crystron Scrap combo video. These 4 names also have effects when they are engraved. You can banish them to do something. This one summons from hand, this one searches a Crystron monster, searches a Crystron spell trap, summons a token. And the reason why we're playing these ratios, you don't use this guy's effect engraved too often. You're mainly trying to get this guy engraved so that Citri can summon him back and make the Quandax, since Quandax is level 4. This Vern we're playing 2 of, mainly because you need 1 for your initial scrap combo, as you might have seen. The second copy is good as sort of follow-up, since you might need to summon Sulfefnir again, so you can basically summon Sulfefnir, pop itself, summon another this Vern. That's great. We'll only play 1 Smiger, only 1 copy of the trap card, as you also see. And then the Rosenix is key for the scrap combo, since you can use Recycler to send Rosenix to grave, and then Rosenix can banish itself to summon that extra body to make Scrap Wyvern. The reason why these names are so low, despite the fact that you might read these cards and think, why not play multiple, is because you actually don't want to draw too many with this particular build, in my opinion. Usually you're using your normal summon on, say, Scrap Recycler, and even though Sulfefnir can turbo out one of these cards, after it turbos out 1 copy, you don't need more copies in hand to do so. And the scrap combo inherently searches out a name to discard off of this. Sorry, I stuttered for a second. The scrap combo searches a Crystron name to discard for Sulfefnir's summon effect, so you don't need to have multiple names to open to resolve that as a result. Speaking of Sulfefnir, this card's great. When in grave or in hand, you can discard a Crystron monster, summon it from grave or hand, and then pop a card that you control. Usually you'll summon itself and then pop itself, and then it can float into any Crystron monster, not just the tuners, since these can tutor out into the tuners. This one can do anything. Speaking of the tuners, we're playing 2 Crystron Citri, 1 Rion. I'm not playing Quan. Quan is not great, being only able to summon from hand. Citri can summon from grave, however, during your opponent's turn, which is nice, and that's why it's 2 rather than 1. And again, we're not playing 3 because we don't want to run too many and draw too many as a result, since it's not a great combo piece. And then Rion, we're playing 1 of. Usually you'll be summoning Citri during your combos, however, the 1 Rion is nice in those weird situations where you do need to summon something that can revive from the banish zone. So I did go through these a bit fast. There are a few niches, or a few extra details on all the Crystron cards that you might want to know, as well as additional facts about their importance in this deck. I just didn't want to spend too much time going through this, since I would basically be explaining to you what Crystron does. So let me know in the comments below if you want any further clarifications on why I'm playing these ratios as it is. So the Scrap engine is hopefully a lot more familiar to some of you, since it was played in Scrap Orcus and can be seen in Earth Machine. So as you see, 3 Recycler, 1 Golem, 3 Raptor. The 3 Recycler is very, very self-explanatory, hopefully. Just dumping any machine name, you can dump any of these names to use their effects. You can dump the Sulfefnir even. And then you do need a scrap name for a Scrap Wyvern, so this is that. Scrap Golem is sort of the garnet for the scrap combo. As you are aware, it does summon your not hard ones per turn Recycler multiple times during your turn, so you can revive this with World Legacy Succession and so forth. Yeah, you only need 1. If you wanted to, you could play 2. There are some really wacky things you can do with 2 copies. For example, you can make the Infinite Track rank 5 to Circle Regulus, which I'm not playing, but that's a cute option if you want to try that out. 3 Raptor, absolutely necessary. Being able to search out Recycler and also being able to search out Scrap Factory, which I find a very key component to this version of the deck. That's why we're playing 3 of this. I do not think these ratios should ever falter. These Crystron ratios can change if you want to incorporate more Crystron names and or hand traps instead, whatever it be. Finally, for the miscellaneous cards and the Therion engine, We're playing one Chet Synchron. I'm putting it up here just to balance things out so my OCD doesn't trigger. One copy of World Legacy World Crown, and 3 copies of Therion Regulus. So Chet Synchron is in here. You'll see I'm playing a Cell Synchron, so that is one of its uses. The other use is this is actually important for when you open World Legacy World Crown. You want to be able to resolve lib, and so if you don't have World Legacy World Crown to dump off of the second recycler that you cycle through during scrap combo, then you can't get to that succession. So what you can do is, of course you can summon this from hand if you need to, which is why I'm playing this over the Chalice. Alternatively, you can dump Chet Synchron during the scrap combo and then use its effect to dump Crown into graveyard, and then that gives you the name engraved to summon lib. So in here for a Cell Synchron, in here to unclog your hand. World Crown, that's your World Legacy name for lib. Again, I wasn't playing Chalice because even though I like the fact you can search succession on subsequent turns, if you play 2 succession, 1 Chalice, I felt like World Crown did offer a little bit more versatility in that if you draw it, isn't necessarily a dead card, since you can summon it and it can be a negate. Also, no, that's mainly it, honestly. Basically, Chalice is great for a resource game, but I do like how Crown overall offers more immediate utility. Finally, the 3 Regulus, also potentially self-explanatory. Regulus being an Omni Negate, it does require a Machine Engrave and your entire deck, bar Scrap Raptor and Golem, weirdly enough, are machines, so you can always summon this throughout your games. No reason to not play it, I suppose, unless of course you want to play hand traps instead, which is completely viable. I just figured, hey, Regulus is a cool card. Therions aren't really in the metagame right now. I know this deck isn't in the metagame per se, but it would be nice to utilize this card, and so I have it in here. This concludes the main deck monster portion. Again, as I said earlier when I was talking about the Crystron cards, if you have any comments or questions about these ratios and or about any of the cards, please let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, now the spells and traps. Alright, so spells and traps also potentially self-explanatory depending on your knowledge of scraps, since most of this is just scrap turbo cards as well as Therion cards. So 3 scrap factories you just saw me put on the board. One copy of Set Rotation, 3 copies of Therion Disc Coliseum, 3 copies of Fossil Dig, 1 copy of Terraforming, 1 copy of World Legacy Succession, 1 copy of Call by the Grave, 1 copy of Foolish Burial, 3 copies of Small World, and 1 copy of Crystron Impact. So, Scrap Factory is a great extender for scrap. Basically, during the course of your combo, let's say you have Raptor, you pop Raptor, Raptor searches Recycler, and you can normal summon that Recycler, but this will also summon another Recycler, which then enables you to dump multiple cards, and then obviously gives you more versatility in your combo lines. So I do believe this is a very good card for a build like this, that for a scrap engine like this that doesn't have everything sort of internalized better. What I mean by that is, if you look at Orcus, Orcus can send World Wand, which satisfies the Orcus engine while also satisfying the name requirement for lib. In this deck, sending World Crown doesn't do that. So a card like Scrap Factory helps this particular scrap engine function to its best of its capabilities by giving those additional bodies that you need to make, say, Masquerena, Appaloosa, Levier, as you'll see I'm playing, not sure if it's necessary, and so forth. Because of the importance that I've placed on Scrap Factory, I'm playing Set Rotation and Terraforming to search it out. It might be a bit excessive to play both, but again, I like being able to guarantee having this card in hand, since it can be hard to open Scrap Factory plus Recycler and or any combination of the scrap starters. You'd be surprised. Worst case scenario, you can use these 2 cards to search Therion Disc Coliseum. And this Therion Disc Coliseum is in here, of course, for the Therion Regulus. The battle protection is also pretty relevant in a lot of situations. Let's say your opponent tries to run over Apple. This does protect your Apple at least once, which is really, really nice. So 3 Fossil Dig. This searches out Scrap Raptor. Scrap Yard, which is a in-archetype Scrap Rhoda, also searches Scrap Raptor. It doesn't matter which card you play, since the Scrap Yard can only search Scrap Tuners, and Raptor is the only Scrap Tuner in this deck, but I think it's up to personal preference. For me, I'd rather be playing Scrap Yard since I like the art more, but this was the only card I had when I was making this video. It's also technically cheaper than Scrap Yard, so if you decide to play this deck on a budget, you could replace the Scrap Yards with Fossil Dig and you'd get the same exact outcome. The 1 Succession, 1 Call by the Grave, 1 Burial. The Succession should be self-explanatory. Again, I alluded the use of Lib multiple times, and this is the main card you would set off of Lib to extend your plays. Summoning a Scrap Golem from Grave, using its not hard once per turn revival, and then using the Recycler's not hard once per turn effect. Call by the Grave is Call by the Grave. Foolish Burial. This is actually a great extender everywhere in this deck. Let's say your Scrap Recycler gets Imperm. You can use this to send Rosenix to still make Wyvern. You can use this to send Chet Synchron to continue your plays if you have the capacity to. You can also send Crystron names if for some reason one of your Crystron names gets decrowed, or if you need another Crystron name in hand, you can send this Vern, so on and so forth. So great card. 3 Small World. This again speaks to the consistency that I'm trying to achieve with this deck. Basically, I'm trying to open Scrap Recycler, Scrap Factory together in hand as commonly as possible. So this not only searches Scrap Factory through Raptor, but also searches Recycler. Since, again, you have Earth Machine, you have basically, even though most of your deck is machine, there's a lot of different levels, a lot of different attributes, a lot of different attacks and defenses. So this actually comes up very, very often, I think 90% of the time, and so I'm playing it to make sure I can get to the end board that I want to get to. Finally, 1 Crystron Impact. This is the card you search off of Smyger. It is the card that helps facilitate those higher leveled synchro plays, since after you make the Quandax, let's say you have Quandax plus this for on field, you can use this to summon back one of the level 2s that you use to make Quandax, and then you can make either Quarion Gandrax or Trishula. The Crystron Impact trap also has a targeting prevention effect built into it. When your opponent tries to target a Crystron monster while this is in grave, after the turn this is sent to grave, you can negate it. So you'd be surprised how much that comes up. Dodging Imperm, dodging like targeting pops and so forth. Great card overall. This is the spells and traps, and now we're going to get on with the extra deck. Regarding the extra deck is something that is really still a test in progress. Since this deck has so many weird interactions, it also has such a weird capacity to make synchro monsters. There's so many options you can throw into the deck, and I'm not sure which ones are the best yet, since it is hard to test this deck since it's not going to win too often against tier. But then, of course, you don't have many people that want to play Rogue. So regardless, we're playing 1 copy of Leviair, 1 copy of Scrap Wyvern, 1 copy of Lib, the World Key Blade Master, 1 copy of IP Masquerena, 1 copy of Appaloosa, 1 copy of Unicorn, 1 copy of Access Code Talker, 1 copy of FA Dawn Dragster, 1 copy of Crystron Amatrix, 1 copy of SL Synchron, 1 copy of Powered Insectron, 1 copy of Trishula, 1 copy of Quarion Gandrax, 1 copy of Quandax, and finally 1 copy of Adamancerpator Drag-typed. So my reasoning behind these choices, Leviair, I like it because you can make it during the combo, and this can recur your resources by putting this Vern back in grave from the banish zone. I'm not sure how necessary it is, since alternatively you could use those extra 2 bodies to make a different Link monster, a different XYZ monster maybe, that furthers your plays rather than guaranteeing follow-up for next turn if your board's sort of weak. So you might consider changing this card out for something else. Wyvern, Lib, essential parts of the combo. I'm not going to go too deep into those. Masquerina's in here because you can make it in lieu of making Appaloosa straight up. By making Masquerina, you can then sort of tag out into Appaloosa. You also have the opportunity of tagging out to Unicorn, very analogous to Orcust if you're familiar with that, but overall IP Masquerina is just a strong card in general. Appaloosa is in here as one of the main negate boss monsters. You can make it pretty easily in Scrap combo with a 2-mat or 3-mat, so that's that. Unicorn is in here, mainly for the Masquerina play I had mentioned earlier, but it also helps as a follow-up for, of course, being Unicorn, spinning back cards. And then access code is access code to round up the Link monsters. Dawn Dragster, to get into the Synchro monsters, Dawn Dragster is a great machine synchro you can make. Let's say Citri summons back Solfafnir, that is level 7, you make this. Great level 7, the only other machine synchro level 7 you could play really is Samurai Destroyer, but this obviously eclipses it in the current format. So that's that. Amatrix and Cell Synchron are your level 5 machine synchros. Amatrix could honestly be replaced with a level 5 super heavy Samurai synchro monster that adds a machine back from grave. I think that has more use, but I'm playing this card just to sort of go off of my own personal bias and try to make this deck as Crystron as possible, since it already feels a little bit less Crystron than it needs to be. This also does come up sometimes, honestly, because you can change your opponent's monsters to defense position, and for opponents that try to ram over Appaloosa with non-link monsters, it's a very funny interaction when that comes up. A Cell Synchron is in here. There are some times where you can't make Quandax because you don't have the level 2 engrave, so you can make a Cell Synchron instead, and that enables some of these lines. So that's that. Paradin Zectron might cut this card, mainly in here for when you summon Crystron Rion. Rion can then summon back Smiger or Thisfern and make this. If you've played Duel Links, you know what I mean. But this might be cut because that line doesn't come up too often, and there are definitely better synchro monsters you can have in here to make. Trishula and Querion Gandrax, these are your main level 9 synchros that you make with that very long combo where you have Quandax, a level 3, and the Crystron Impact. I'm playing both because sometimes you want one or the other. Sometimes you want to banish 3 from different places, sometimes you just want to banish 3 monsters. Crystron Quandax, main level 4 machine synchro that we make with the Citri and the Periostol. Gotta play it, really, for at least for Crystron, right? And then finally, Dragtite. All your machine monsters or all your Crystron names are water, so it's very frequent that you'll have this live. Even though you can't quick synchro summon into this inherently with the Crystron tuner monsters in the main deck, you can make this with Quandax and with a Cell Synchron in certain lines, and so that's why I'm playing this. You could play Psyframe Lord Gear Omega. That does offer some more utility since you can shuffle your Crystron banished monsters back into the graveyard, but I felt like Dragtite might be more useful since it is of course a negate. This is the extra deck, and finally we'll get to the concluding remarks of the video. To summarize this deck in a couple of sentences, is it good? No, probably not. Is it fun? Yes, at least if you're me. Is it a well-constructed deck? Not sure. Is it an abomination? For sure. Basically, this is just a for fun deck to try out if you really want to. You don't have to buy the cards necessarily, but you can play this deck online maybe if you wanted to. If you do have all the cards, you can try it out. I just wanted to share with all of you because, as I constantly state, this channel is mostly a creative outlet for me, and as much as I love P.U.N.K, I do have other archetypes I do enjoy, and I wanted to be able to expand my horizons, have my channel tackle some of these other decks I enjoy, rather than being forced to think of constant P.U.N.K content when I sometimes aren't inspired to make said content. So yeah, I think most of my points on this deck, like technical wise, were covered throughout the deck or throughout the video. For example, there are still a lot of ratios I want to change around, a lot of extra deck monsters I might want to move in or out. It is a bit hard to test with the deck, but I'll make progress, and maybe down the line, if people are interested in seeing an updated version of this, I'll make it. But for now, I just wanted to have this video out there as sort of a stamp on my channel that this is something I have played before, that I am proud that I made, and that, you know, I want to share with all of you. So yeah, I won't comment too further since this again is a for fun deck, not really much to say in regards to its relevance in the current format, because I don't think it has anything on tier versus some other rogue decks. Like some other decks can turbo out Dweller amazingly. Maybe they can play like Banisher of the Radiance or like Macrocosmos or something weird that completely destroys tier. This deck doesn't have that, but it's still fun. I know I keep saying that, but it generally is. So at this point, this is more or less the end of the video, so remember to like and subscribe if you haven't. I appreciate all of you watching. As I had said earlier, you are the reason why I'm still here. And you do bring... being able to share all this content with all of you and talk with all of you in the comments below does make me happy. This said, yeah, thank you for watching. Hopefully you have and or had a good Thanksgiving break, and or if you celebrated something else, hopefully those celebrations went well. And I will cue the outro here.